is going to drop by. We're going to be talking about that's the Tea Party end of it. We're also going to be talking about the Occupy and progressive movement and all that end of it, the 6 people necessary to make a movement work.
Yeah, she just wrote a really interesting article on Alternet about the 6 people needed to make a revolution work. And this really goes to the heart of any sort of conflict that might be arising between the leaderless Occupy movement and more established groups like Move On that are trying to build off the momentum that was built over the last 6 months. She basically says, you need your activists in the streets, you need your intellectuals, you need your artists, but you also need your insiders. You need the people who know how politics works. And you need your disenfranchised elites, and you need the masses. And you need all of these components in order to make a revolution successful. And it's something that we've been talking about in our show, and it'll be nice to have a conversation with her about this.
Yeah, and in fact, the French Revolution, I think, Maximilien Robespierre is a classic example of what happens when you don't have a broad base for revolution, when just one faction takes over, or when you have factions where infighting erupts and one faction kills off the other faction.
Yeah, and you're constantly demanding purity tests and purity tests and purity tests, and pretty soon nobody is pure enough.
Yep, there you go. Communist Party. Last week, I used my daily take to send a message to progressives around the nation about how important it is to stay united this year and not let infighting tear us apart. Take a look. You want to be the person of the streets, holding Wall Street accountable and facing off against the institutions of power? And good on you. This movement needs you. And if you want to be the person working on the inside, meeting with elected officials, running for office, fundraising, then good on you too. True progressive change in America needs all of us, both on the outside and the inside. Those without leaders and those who work in more established venues. We're all needed to win. So let's get back to work. Last week, the 99% Spring, sponsored by more established groups like MoveOn.org and several labor unions, taught tens of thousands of activists across the nation nonviolent activism techniques. But the participation of these established organizations has ruffled some feathers within the apparently leaderless Occupy movement that fears co-option. In an article for Alternet last week, Sarah Robinson tried to calm the fears of the Occupy folks by writing about what all revolutionary movements need in order to succeed. Joining me now to talk more about this and the future of a progressive revolution in America is Sarah Robinson, social futurist and editor at Alternet Vision. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Tom. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Your article talks about the 6 people needed to start a revolution. Let's go through them. Activists?
Activists, right. And this is what Occupy brought to the party that we've been very short on for a very long time. So it's good to have them here.
Okay.
We haven't really had people who knew how to turn people out in the streets in big numbers, how to keep them there, keep them engaged, tell a story that the media and the American people would really be grabbed by. So we are glad to have them on the scene because it's been a long time since we've seen ones of this quality and strength.
Okay, and in addition to activists, we need intellectuals?
Absolutely. People like you and me, people who write, who think, who blog, who are theorists, academics, people who do the research and talk through, think through what kind of change we really want to see, what kind of policies we'll need to enact, philosophical basis, the kind of language that we use, the people who kind of do the hard academic work that undergirds everything else that the movement does.
Okay, we need artists.
Right, because the intellectuals who figure out what story we need to tell and who figure out the map usually aren't very good at communicating those stories to more people. And we have these compelling cultural technologies, if you will, which things like poetry and music and art and dance and all the movie making and all these wonderful ways that really grab people by the guts and get them motivated to go forth and put their lives on the line and make the sacrifices necessary that will really, really launch the movement. You can't do it with people who give you deep meaning for what you're doing.
And the next 3 groups, or at least 2 of the next 3 groups, are the ones that I've seen some blog posts and articles pushing back against insiders.
Right. Yeah, Occupy is having a very hard time because a lot of the people they see affiliated with the 99% Spring, they see as insiders, which of course comes as news to a lot of these groups who feel like they're very much on the outside. But they are people who work inside the Beltway, who have been around Washington a long time and know how the sausage gets made. They know who to call and who to talk to and where the levers of power are. And these are our scouts and spotters. They're the ones who really understand the system well enough to let us know if our strategies are going to work or not, to tip us off when there's an opportunity that if you don't know the system, you might miss. And we're a little nervous about these people, and sometimes we should be, because we don't quite know where their loyalties lie. But at the end of the day, you need what they know about this system if you're going to dismantle that system.
Okay, and supportive elites. We had on the program, for example, a couple of weeks ago, Ben Cohen. He had given some money to fund one of the programs out of Occupy, and he got a lot of blowback for that.
Absolutely. But Marx himself said that the turning point in any revolution is when you get disaffected elites, the people who should be being well supported by the system as it exists. But whenever you have a country that's ripe for revolution, the intellectual class, professional classes, a lot of the wealthy are cut out. And you see this kind of corrupt financialization in any country that's going on the revolutionary slide. And so there'll be people who should be in power by dint of inheritance or by tremendous massive talent or skill, and yet they're being cut out. And when those people wake up and join the revolution, that changes everything, because they have tremendous resources to bear. They know how to counter attacks. They have the money. They have the influence. They can go in and they're like the insiders. They're connected.
Right.
And when they bring what they know to the revolution, that's generally when things really take off.
And then you need, of course, the masses. That's when it hits the tipping point.
Right. You don't have a mass movement without the masses. And I think that's the thing that some Occupy leaders right now are having a hard time with, because they put in such hard work for the last 6 months, and they've done so much. And the idea that all these other people are going to come on board and bring all these other skills and resources and priorities is a little hard for them to digest right now. But if you're going to have a mass movement, you have to have an open source. You have to make it easy for anybody to walk in and make themselves comfortable and at home, find their place, and give what they have to offer.
There have been, I think your 6 groups or your 6 kinds of people are well represented, for example, in the American Revolution, and arguably, or not even arguably, very well represented in things like the abolition movement, the suffrage movement, the civil rights movement. On the other hand, the French Revolution, which kind of went the wrong way, what was it missing?
It actually had all the pieces. It had a tremendous intellectual base. It had activists. It had people in the streets. What it also had, though, was Robespierre, who got very paranoid about co-optation. And the historical fact is that the majority of the people who went to the guillotine were revolutionaries themselves. It wasn't the aristocrats. The terror was Robespierre stripping down his revolution, looking for anybody he thought might try to co-opt or pollute it. So it was a purity crusade. And this is what happens. You can lose a revolution as glorious as the French one was. You can lose it utterly if you get too nervous about who owns it, who gets to set the agenda, who's really in control. And Robespierre managed to went up to the Montagnards and the Girondists and yada, yada, yada. And before you knew it, he himself was on the block, and that's when it ended.
Yep. Sarah Robinson, you are brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
As I said last week, this movement needs both outsiders on the streets and insiders in groups like Move On and even in Congress to succeed. So let's get to work, all of us, outsiders and insiders, to make this happen.